VS Code settings will improve your development experience and also your productivity. You can open your VS Code settings by clicking on this bottom right icon and then clicking on settings. It will open a settings tab inside VS Code where you can make every change. On the left hand side, all the main categories are listed out on which the changes can be made. At the top, we have commonly used settings. Autosave can automatically save the changes inside your code. It can save you a lot of time, and by default it is off, but you can select other options like after delay, on focus change or on window change, but I will prefer after delay. Anytime you make changes in your code, you don't have to worry about saving it. Cursor style can be changed to block, underline, line thin, block outline or underline thin. This is block cursor style, just like a terminal. This is underline cursor. There are other cursor styles, but for me, I think line is the best because you can easily tell where the cursor is placed. Very often inside your code you have long line of code. To see it properly, you have to scroll to the right. To wrap the line, you have to select the on option. Now in your code, you can see your line of code is wrapped and you do not even need to scroll to the right to see it properly. There is another option called bounded that will wrap at minimum of viewport. As you can see inside your code, there is more space on the right and it is properly wrapped. Text editor has a settings for the editor itself like cursor, find, font, formatting and other settings. Cursor's blinking animation style can be changed. It can be blink, smooth, phase, expand or solid. This is a smooth animation style. This is face animation style and it looks very smooth. And this is really cool looking expand style. Solid style if you do not want your cursor to be blinked. You can even set the cursor width. Let's set it to 4. And let's see how it looks. So as you can see, our cursor is more wide. The default font family in VS Code is Menlo, Monaco, Courier New and Monospace. So this is how it looks. Let's change it to Futura. Now as you can see, the font for your code is in the Futura font style. Font weight for your code can be normal or bold. It is saying that edit in settings.json. So settings.json is another way to change settings in your VS Code. You can open it by clicking on this icon, that is open settings.json. So as you can see, your settings in the JSON format is opened. All the changes we are doing in the settings panel are also added in the settings.json. As you can see, we had just added word wrap as bounded, so it is also added here. Then cursor blinking solid, we just changed that. Cursor weight 2. Now we are going to change font weight. It's normal by default. Now let's change it to bold. So great, our code is changed into bold so it can be easily read. One of my favorite settings is format on save. What it does is it will format your whole file just when you save your file. We will select it. It will say a formatter must be available. To select a default formatter on which you are working, you can type here in the search settings default formatter, and then on text editor it will select a default formatter for editor. None is selected by default. Here you can select the language support for JavaScript and TypeScript, and here's TypeScript and JavaScript language features, and it will select this formatter for our JS file. Now suppose in your file some part of your code is not formatted, so when you press Ctrl+S or Command+S, your code will be automatically formatted. Or alternatively, you can download pre-tier code formatter for VS Code extension, which can format all languages like JavaScript, TypeScript, JSX, JSON, CSS, HTML, and much more. After installing pre-tier, you can go to the same default formatter setting, and here you can select pre-tier code formatter. So now if I save it, as you can see, our code is formatted with the pre-tier standard, and even the semicolons are added where they were not added. Lots of options are there to configure the minimap. When its auto hide feature is enabled, minimap will be hidden automatically. As you can see, if I hover over here, minimap will appear, and if I hover over left, it will disappear. You can disable the minimap entirely. Now the minimap will not be shown at all. By default, it is drawn on the scale of 1. Its size can be increased by changing the scale. Now you will see your minimap has grown. Even its position can be changed from right to left. Now it is rendered on the left hand side. With the size setting, you can make it to fill the whole space. Now you will see it is filling the whole space on the left hand side. Suggestion setting contains the settings to handle the inline suggestions. Accept suggestion on commit character controls whether suggestion should be accepted on commit characters. In JavaScript, semicolon is a commit character. When you press it, your suggestion is automatically typed. This setting will let you accept the suggestion on the enter key. With this, you simply press enter and your suggestion will be typed. Usually tab is the key to accept the suggestion, but you can actually set it to off to help to avoid hide ambiguity between inserting new lines or accepting suggestions. Actually, it is a task of IntelliSense to show suggestions. By default, it is enabled for classes, colors, constants, and all other different types of fields. So you can actually disable them if you want to. So by default, they are enabled for every field. Now there are workbench settings. This is the activity bar, and through this setting you can change its position. By default it is on the side, but you can actually set it to the top. Here you can see the settings and your account is at the top, and also you can hide it if you want to. With color theme setting you can actually change the theme of your VS Code. You might have not noticed this, but the font aliasing is applied by default inside VS Code, but by default it is only subpixel font smoothing, and if you set it to none, you will notice that there are some rough edges in the text. When you select anti-aliasing, your text become even more smoother. Here the anti-aliasing for the fonts is applied, but one thing to take care is that your font will become a little lighter when you apply it. With icon theme setting, you can actually set the theme for your icons inside your Explorer. So here I will set some other theme. As you can see, the icons for these files are changed. Location of the sidebar can be changed from left to right with this setting. With this setting, you can make the status bar visible or hidden. I usually make it hidden because it just takes some extra space. Next, we have settings for breadcrumbs. Actually, if you don't know, these are the breadcrumbs in which you can navigate to different folders or files directly from here, but I do not use it. Actually from here, from this setting, you can disable it. As you can see, it is now disabled. There are lots of other settings that you can change, like there are settings for editor management, settings editor, Zen mode, screencast mode. Inside window section, there is a setting for new window. Then inside features section, we have settings for accessibility, explorer, search, debug, testing, then source control, extensions, terminal, task, then problems, output, comments, remote, timeline, notebook, audio cues, merge editor, and chat. Then application, we have proxy, keyboard, update, telemetry, settings sync, experimental, and other settings. Then inside security, we have settings for workspace. At last, we have settings for extension. There are lots of extensions in which you can change your settings directly inside VS Code.